Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, August 31st, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the Virginia Democrats set to announce $9 million and much more across the state in ad reservations ahead of the 2025 elections as we head into the final stretch of this 2025 election season. The Spanberger campaign set to spend roughly $16 million more in the 2025 governor's race in this state. The Democrats in the state of Virginia also set to spend $11.5 million, the largest amount they've ever spent in TV reservations ahead of the 2025 cycle, at a point in time where today they already stand with a pretty notable amount. In this state already had that advancement. This is an article from July. Now we're starting to see that they're really going to hammer it in. And based on the metrics and based on the numbers, this is only going to benefit Democrats further across a number of these competitive races. The Virginia Democrats announcing that they are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars into swing districts in these states. I mean, this is an amount of money that when it comes down to state House of Delegate races and close and competitive ones that are decided on the margins, Virginia Democrats know that all too well. In 2017, they lost control of the House of Delegates because of a tied election where one vote would have made all the difference, and Republicans pulled the bigger straw, and the Republicans held control of the House of Delegates, nullifying, Democrats from having that control for 2 years until 2019 when they eventually won it. Now in 2025, not only are Democrats expected to easily win the majority in the House of Delegates, but also potentially expand with a 13% chance of winning a supermajority in the state's delegation. And thinking about just the way that this race has been won and run, but arguably won, Democrats have been in a very strong position in Virginia in the aftermath of the 2024 election. It wasn't going to take much for them to win the governorship after Kamala Harris won the state by 5.8%, but it wasn't going to be the easiest thing possible either. After all, it was Biden who won the state by 10.1%, and a year later, Glenn Youngkin is elected governor. But due to a bunch of unforced errors on the Republican side and a very well and put together campaign ranging from, Jay Jones for Attorney General, Ghazala Hashmi for Lieutenant Governor, Abigail Spanberger for Governor, Democrats have been really hammering it in this state and building out a huge and broad coalition that is expected to land them a very strong showing in the 2025 race. And what has been interesting is that the two recent polls that show a quote-unquote tightening of the race are polls that actually have extremely skewed electorates. Taking a look at the 2025 polls that we've seen from Coefficient, the data that they shows Spanberger leading by 5. But this is actually a Republican plurality electorate that they polled. 40% of respondents to this Coefficient poll self-identify as a Republican. But in 2024, that electorate for Republicans was only 31%. The mere idea that 2025 will have a more Republican electorate than 2024 is laughable. But the fact remains, the poll itself overskewed towards Republicans. And still, Abigail Spanberger leads by 5. Roanoke College also released a poll that I thought initially, Republicans were saying, there's an article out there about they are becoming cautiously optimistic about the Virginia governor's race. But when you actually get into the nitty-gritty about this race right at the end, before you actually analyze the poll, I think this is the first thing that we should read here. But you're going to find that they weighted the 2025 poll to the 2021 Virginia exit poll, which means they were weighting the poll that shows Spanberger ahead by 7 to the same electorate that shows Youngkin by 2. That is baffling and certainly malpractice when it comes down to polling. But I'm not a pollster. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to rip it apart. But I am going to say, if a Youngkin plus 2 matched electorate chooses Spanberger by 7, best believe she's going to win by more than that. And so for Democrats now, who were already in a very strong position to have this amount about to be funneled into the race, this is not spare change, right? This is not them just spending what they have. This is an insane amount of money and an incomprehensible one at that. $11.5 million when there are less than 15 to 20 competitive races in the House of Delegates. You can literally split, roughly $500,000 in these races and split them across districts the Democrats are going to be competing in. The Republicans just simply can't keep up. And lack of fundraising isn't just contained. I showed you this early on. Spanberger is outpacing Winsome Sears in every way. Polling, fundraising, performances, number of events, visibility, now ad spending. This is insane. You don't get to this point unless you are about to really usher in a groundbreaking defeat of the opposition party. And adamantly, that's what I believe we are about to see. Democrats already had a very strong position in Virginia, and this only makes it stronger. Money talks in American politics, and in a state as small as Virginia, $18.5 million only hammers things in. We've seen Democrats lose races in the final stretch of the campaign season. In fact, Democrats saw it. In 2021, they took a lead that at this point in time 4 years ago were in a good position and ultimately lost the race. And Republicans are saying, okay, this is going to happen with Winsome Sears, but I want to caution you in saying, I don't think that it will. It was at this point that we started to see slipping. We started to see Terry McAuliffe's lead really, really shrink across every single pollster. Public policy polling, which leans towards the Democrats, only had him up by 3. And as you got closer to the election, it became more apparent that Glenn Youngkin was going to win. Not to mention, gaffes at a debate. Also, too, Biden, his approval rating went down. In August of 2021, he was approved of, positively. By November of 2021, he was approved of negatively, right? So voters had soured on Biden in the final stretch, but Trump had always been soured on in the state of Virginia. They didn't even vote for him in 2024. And now thinking about 2025, Winsome Sears doesn't even have the endorsement from Donald Trump, doesn't capture in a lot of the MAGA base, but simultaneously turns off a lot of these swing voters that might have been, Northam, Youngkin, now Spanberger voters. Spanberger, who also received the endorsement from the Police Benevolent Association, which hasn't endorsed a Democrat for governor since 2009. Everyone is reading the writing on the wall, and only this seems to be confirming it further. The Democrats are in a better position, and they are going to increase that position. And it opens up the idea for Democrats to have an even more expansive legislative advantage. The House of Delegates is already going to go to the Democrats. Republicans have about an 8% chance of winning House of Delegates control, so 92% chance, of Republicans not having the majority. They had the majority in 2021 to 2023, and they lost it in 2023. But my point is, the Democrats already being in this position, if they get a more expansive House of Delegates majority, or whatever it is, they are going to be that much more likely to pass more robust legislation. This would be the largest, if these numbers hold, just the 58-42 numbers, not even, further than that. But if it does get further than that, obviously, more power to the Democrats in that circumstance. But if these numbers hold, Democrats will be in the best position in terms of how many seats they hold that the 21st century has seen for Virginia Democrats. This would be the largest majority they would have had. And that means something. It makes the difference between passing new congressional maps versus not. It makes the difference between passing universal child care and free and reduced school lunches versus not. Majorities are everything, and the way at which you are ushering in an expansive majority matters. And Democrats who have learned that in 2021, what it looks like to lose a race in the final stretch due to Republicans being, again, better on ads, better on winning over, key groups of voters, being able to take a lot of these different, races and move them in a way where you're getting endorsements and starting to lead in the polls. These are very big things. Youngkin and McAuliffe spent about the exact same money in 2021 as each other. In a race, if Republicans are spending as much for, the vote as Democrats, chances are they're in a good position. This time around, you're not going to see that. It is Spanberger who is constantly outspending and outpacing Winsome Sears. And that makes a huge difference. And by the time you reach the election, you can actually see here, Winsome Sears, who before the primary raised just $5.6 million, Winsome Sears, Abigail Spanberger raised $16 million, only spent about $5.2 million ahead of the primary, then decided to spend it all for the general election. She's already outpacing Sears. Republicans can't keep up. They're losing it not just in the governor's race, not just in the lieutenant governor's race, not just in the attorney general's race, but now also Democrats outpacing them on the House of Delegates races. No matter where you look, the Virginia GOP is in a dire state. And we talked about this recently, but these new fundraising numbers, these new, ad spending numbers are going to be what really hammers it in favor of the Democratic Party and ultimately boosts them out of the 2025 cycle where Democrats might actually do better than we expect in the battleground state of Virginia. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2025 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.